Hello, and welcome to another video from 3.5 Archive. Today, we're going to be doing another D&D 3.5 Prestige class review, and we're going to be looking at the Holt Warden from the Complete Champion sourcebook. Holt Wardens are the spiritual leaders of the Guardians of the Green, an organization that also encompasses the Fist of the Forest and Forest Reeve Prestige classes. The Guardians of the Green are fanatical protectors of nature, and Holt Wardens are no exception. They are nurturers, guides, and defenders of the natural world and those around them. To become a Holt Warden, you will need to have 8 ranks in Knowledge Nature and 4 ranks in Survival. You'll need to be able to cast at least 3rd level Divine spells, as well as the first 3 levels of Plant Domain spells. You have to be of any neutral alignment, and lastly, you need to be chosen to be a Holt Warden by the Guardians of the Green leadership, and then complete a 1-year apprenticeship to someone who already has at least 5 levels in Holt Warden. This last requirement is quite possibly the most restrictive, as many campaigns do not allow for a year of downtime. It'd be hard to argue that a year of time to get into a Prestige class would be a lot to ask. Still, setting that aside, this Prestige class's requirements demand that you either play a druid, a cleric with the plant domain, or a spirit shaman. The Shugenja could almost make it, but they don't get Entangle as a first level spell. Oh well. As a Holt Warden, your stats are almost identical to a druid's or cleric's, just with a worse hit die. You get a d6 hit die, 3/4 base attack bonus, good fortitude and will saves, and 4+ intelligence modifier skill points per level. You also get full spellcasting, advancing your divine spellcasting at every one of this prestige class's 10 levels. This is a great framework for a class, continuing your druid or cleric advancement. Let's take a look at what class features you get. At level 1, the Holt Warden gets Nature Sense and Plant Affinity. The former is the same Nature Sense feature that a druid gets at level 1, except fortunately this feature stacks with any existing Nature Sense you already have, giving you a total of +4 on Knowledge Nature and Survival checks, if you have both. This feature isn't hugely useful, as Knowledge Nature checks tend to be for animals who often have lower challenge ratings, and also rarely have particular weaknesses or special abilities for your character to know about. Survival also doesn't have a huge amount of utility in many games, at least at higher DCs, unless you're doing tracking or something. You also get Plant Affinity at level 1, which is a bit complicated. Essentially, if you are a cleric, you can choose to permanently give up your ability to turn your prepared spells into cure or inflict spells, and replace that ability with the ability to spontaneously exchange your prepared spells with an equivalent level spell from the plant domain. So basically, instead of channeling cure spells, you channel spells from the plant domain. If you're a druid who doesn't have bonus domain spells, you get extra spells from the plant domain as if you had that domain. So this option gives you the ability to cast Entangle, Barkskin, Plant Growth, Command Plants, Wall of Thorns, Repel Wood, and Animate Plants, Control Plants, and Shambler at any time by sacrificing an equivalent level of spell. None of these spells are bad, but they are often situational, and while in-combat healing is rarely a good idea as a cleric, it can be nice to have up your sleeve as an option. And more to that point, a Cure Light Wound spell maintains its utility for far longer than Entangle does. Barkskin, Wall of Thorns, and Shambler can be used in almost any situation, but will still not be as good as Cure spells will be when they are really needed. It might be tempting to take these options for fun, but they likely won't make a cleric stronger. Should a druid trade their ability to spontaneously cast Summon Nature's Ally? Even less so than the cleric should. Summoning is extremely strong, and a druid can cast all of these spells anyway. It'd be a lot better to just have some of them prepared and keep your spontaneous spellcasting available for Summon Nature's Ally. That's level 1, and you give up an extra use of Wild Shape each day in order to get these features if you're a druid. If you're a cleric, you weren't getting a class feature anyway, so no worries there. The druid's second use of Wild Shape is his most important, except of course for his first use per day, as more daily uses get less and less important as the levels go on. 2 is the sweet spot, and you might want to consider an extra level of druid somewhere in here, but without new size categories and creature types for your Wild Shape, you're unlikely to be using it a whole lot anyway. At level 2, you get Rebuke Plants, which is a far more interesting feature. You can rebuke or command plants as per the plant domain feature. So if you already have it, this doesn't help you, and seems to in fact split your levels in half, as you are no longer gaining cleric levels, so not improving your plant domain rebuke ability, while also gaining a new one based on your Holt Warden level. Perhaps a generous DM could hand out a +2 in the turning check for a cleric who comes into this prestige class already equipped with that plant domain, but for druids this is just a weaker feature of the ability. Still, being able to command 4 to 20 hit dice of plant creatures can be great. The problem will be encountering them in the campaign. A generous DM might be helpful to you and place more in your way, perhaps as a random wilderness encounter. A less helpful DM might have it so you never run into any plant creatures at all. There aren't that many plant creatures in the core monster manual proportionally to the rest. This is a cool ability, but not enough to make up for losing wild shape advancement, and it's going to be a challenge to get any use out of. Also at level 2, you gain Woodland Stride. If you already have it, you get a plus 10 foot bonus to speed. That's nice, but not particularly important to the spellcaster. Maybe for getting into melee faster while in wild shape, but again, this prestige class detracts from wild shape, so it's really not helping there. Still, as a secondary feature, it's not terrible. At level 3, you get Earth's Communion. You can use this once per day, gaining a second use at level 5, a third at level 7, a fourth at level 9. You sit and concentrate for 10 minutes to use this feature, and then you can cast Heal as a spell-like ability. You can divide the hit points however you choose among anyone else sitting in the circle holding hands with you, which is great because a healing spell is usually overdoing it when it comes to healing just you, especially for a level 8 character. The other benefits of the heal spell can only be given to one creature each, so you could only cure one creature of blindness at a time, for example. While healing, especially healing that takes 10 minutes to use, isn't that strong, usually when Wands of Cure Light Wounds are available, having 80 hit points to divide up in the most optimal way isn't bad at all. Not to mention having access to removing ability damage, blindness, disease, feeble-mindedness, insanity, and more. Makes this prestige class feature pretty great, honestly, especially for the level that you get it at least by itself when you're not considering the extra uses of wild shape that you're giving up. It's a nice feature to have, and arguably, at least for this level, when you're giving up maybe a third or fourth use of wild shape, it's really not that bad, since you probably wouldn't be using those uses anyway. At level 4, you don't get a class feature, but at least your spellcasting advances. Still a bit of a disappointment. At level 5, you get a second use per day of Earth's Communion, as well as Venom Immunity. You're getting the latter ability a level later than you would as a druid, but that's okay. At level 6, you get Whispers of the Forest. This is a 2-tiered feature, and the first part you get right now is called News. You can use it twice per day, and at level 9, a third time per day. You can focus and get visions granted by the land that describe to you current events nearby. You can ask questions of distant lands, but you must focus for 1 minute per mile of distance you wish to perceive. Also at the DM's option, you'll be visited by these visions unprompted, usually for plot hook purposes and adventure hook purposes. This is a decent divination ability, but it is fairly limited, and while it is flavorful and fun, it doesn't feel like it really does a whole lot besides find new adventure hooks for your party. It can warn you about imminent threats, perhaps even imminent random encounters if your DM wishes. Seeing how far you're straying from the base druid advancement with this prestige class, that would be more than fair to expect from a dungeon master, but don't tell your DM I said that. At level 7, you gain the Web of Life feature. This allows you to sing, chant, or give an inspirational speech for 1 minute. All living creatures who hear you get plus 2 wisdom for 1d4 hours. Any divine spellcasters that hear you gain back 1d4 levels of spell slots, split up as they choose, and must be used to refresh already spent spell slots, and the same spell used must be spells that were previously prepared or previously cast in a day for spontaneous spellcasters. This is a great ability and fitting for a leadership-focused prestige class among druids. While it's not likely you'll be dragging a lot of lower-level druids along in a party with multiple divine spellcasters, this will be fantastic. In a party where you fill the role of the fighter and still have a cleric or equivalent along, this will be great for that. In a party where you fill the role of a cleric, this feature loses a lot of its efficacy because you probably won't have another divine caster in the party. It would be arguable this isn't very good in the standard D&D party. Still, with a bit of coordination or in a themed party made up entirely of Guardians of the Green, it would be excellent. Level 8 gives you no feature, but level 9 gives you a 4th use per day of Earth's Communion and Timeless Body, which works the same as the Druid feature. You're probably not going to be needing all these extra uses of Earth's Communion, by the way. They are nice to have, but really, twice per day maximum is the most you're probably going to ever use it, and even then, that would be a very, very punishing day in the campaign. You do get Timeless Body a level earlier than a Druid would if you start taking Holt Wardens after level 5. A fitting reward, but not hugely relevant in most campaigns, although in one focused on your leadership and your character's long-term place in the world, it might be. Finally, at level 10, you gain the second tier of your Whispers of the Forest ability, Insights. This lets you ask the forest about a single creature, and you get a +8 on Bluff, Diplomacy, Intimidate, and Sense Motive checks pertaining to that creature. For a capstone ability for a prestige class, this is pretty bad. While Holt Wardens are meant to serve as diplomats, this is a pretty weak option for most campaigns, and really not something you're going to look forward to. It's a disappointing end to a prestige class that has some decent features otherwise. So, overall, the Holt Warden is a major downgrade from the Druid due to the lack of wild shape advancement. While it does get some Druid features, a moderately strong divination skill, and a pretty solid healing ability, it's hard to want to take this instead of the Druid. Earth's Communion is nice if your party doesn't want to have a cleric. This can help make up for the Druid's weaker healing if you don't want to tote a wand around. Still, if you're going to take this prestige class, you're better off taking 3 or maybe 5 levels in it. If you really don't care for wild shape, or if you feel that you would overshadow the other party members if you did, then go for the entire prestige class, but as is, between the dead levels and the other abilities, it's not very strong. There's no real good reason why level 4 and level 8 couldn't have had improvements to wild shape, at least more uses per day, and the ability to access large and tiny creatures. At level 15, a druid can turn into an animal or plant creature from tiny to huge size up to 5 times a day, while the Holt Warden can turn into a medium animal once a day. That should illustrate the drastic difference in wild shaping ability between the two. If they were exiting this prestige class with 3 wild shape uses a day and access to large and tiny animals, it would at least be passable if mediocre. But as is, it's really hard to justify giving up so much from the Druid, even with full spellcasting. The Holt Warden is a different path, but it's simply not as strong as one. Rebuking plants is great, but it doesn't replace wild shape, and it's something a cleric could already do. If you came into this prestige class as a plant domain cleric already, then you aren't missing out on the wild shape advancement, obviously. But the rebuke plants feature becomes a bit redundant for you. Either way, this prestige class could have been far better structured, to make it a much more tempting option. It gets 3 stars for concept, and 2 stars for execution, which really should be 1.5 in some ways. It is only saved by Earth's Communion and the Web of Life feature in a party tailored around it, or at least tailored around the Guardians of the Green organization. So that'll be about it for this D&D 3.5 Prestige Class review. Please like, share, comment, subscribe, and so on. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time here on 3.5 Archive.